Hi all, welcome back to Look Movie Recaps. Today I will be explaining a movie called Fracture from 2007. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with Ted Crawford, a wealthy Irish aeronautical engineer living in Los Angeles. Finding the smallest fractures in aviation systems is part of his job. Ted hurriedly leaves after presenting his colleague with a simple flaw he had discovered, without waiting for the algorithm to confirm it. Shifting to a couple having an affair, with the man being Lieutenant Rob and the woman, Jennifer Crawford, who is also Ted's wife. Ted pulls off to the side of the road. He notices the two, and then enters the property, to observe how his wife is cheating on him. Next, Ted's wife is driving home, and as she enters the house, Ted appears out of nowhere. He tries to kiss his wife, but she is uninterested, and tells him she is going to start dinner. He asks her about the affair. She apologizes, but he takes out a gun and shoots her in the head. The gardeners hear the shooting and approach closer to check. Ted fires a few more shots, terrifying them and causing them to flee. Ted wipes the cartridges on the ground, washes himself, and burns the clothing he was wearing. After the gardeners report the incident, the police arrive. Lieutenant Rob serves as a hostage negotiator among them. He calls Ted, and then goes inside. Ted calmly informs the lieutenant that he has shot his wife. The lieutenant is shocked when he finds the woman's body. He checks her pulse. Ted steps forward and points the gun at him. The lieutenant grabs the gun and charges at Ted. The lieutenant repeatedly hits him in the face but is stopped by the other cops. Ted is apprehended and arrested by the authorities. Fortunately, when the doctors check on Jennifer, they discover that she is still breathing. Next, we are introduced to Willy, a deputy district attorney. His co-workers call him about Ted's attempted murder case. Since there are witnesses available, and Ted's confession, Willy believes this will be a simple case, so he decides to handle it right away. Ted doesn't request a defense attorney at the preliminary hearing, because he wants to represent himself. Both the judge and Willy are surprised that he is in such a serious situation and advise him to accept a lawyer. He is however adamant and asks to be transferred to the trial as soon as possible. When he is told that the district attorney's office can change prosecutors, he states that he likes Willy and doesn't want to change him. That evening, the lieutenant goes to Willy, to warn him that there is something unusual about Ted, but Willy is confident that he will win the case, because of the available evidence and admissions. He meets Nikki Gardner, who introduces herself as his boss. He begins to flirt with her, but a phone call from Willy's colleague interrupts their chat. It states that the weapon they found at Ted's house was never used. In addition, Ted never left the house that night after committing the crime, until he was arrested, therefore, he did not have a chance to change weapons. Willy returns to the crime scene the next morning to investigate. He discovers that Ted had no gunpowder on his body or hands. Nevertheless, 4 bullets are missing from the cartridge. However, there are no fingerprints on the 4 cartridges. He insists that the weapon is still in the house, and instructs his friend to continue searching, then leaves. He returns to his office and is handed a file containing the evidentiary documents for the case, which he had properly provided. When he opens it, he notices that each sheet has the word "no" scribbled on it in red pen. He goes to find Ted, and discovers, to his amazement, that he reads him like a book. Ted reveals that he has hired a secret agent to find out a lot of personal information about Willy. Ted teases him by inviting him to become his defense attorney, suggesting that he has a chance to switch sides before things get ugly, but Willy refuses. Before leaving, Ted tells Willy a story from his childhood. His father, an egg farmer, asked him to inspect the eggs, and put the good ones and the bad ones in the bucket in the oven. He put 300 eggs in the oven bucket, because he discovered flaws and weaknesses in all of them. He reminds Willy that if you look closely enough, you can find flaws in anything. Willy wonders if he has discovered his weakness, and he states that he has already discovered it. During the trial, Willy takes turns calling witnesses to ask questions. Ted is sitting quietly, drawing some blueprints, without paying attention to the witnesses' statements, and not coming forward to ask questions. Willy calls the lieutenant a witness, and he states that Ted had confessed to killing his wife. Ted replies that the lieutenant was having an affair with his wife and has proof of it. The lieutenant gets up from his chair, and aggressively pounces on Ted. As a result, the trial is postponed. That evening, Willy, Ted and the judge sit together. Ted has evidence about the motel where the lieutenant and Jennifer were spending time together, as he hired a private investigator to investigate. Moreover, since the lieutenant was present at the time of the confession, this may have prompted Ted to say what killed his wife, just to please the lieutenant. As a result, the judge ceases the confession, and gives Willy a few days to find more evidence, failing which Ted can go home. Later, Willy's employer resents him for losing this. Saying he had not focused enough, he came to the trial unprepared, and as a result, He did not do a good job. Willy tries to explain that this is a ruse, but his boss sticks to his point. Willy then goes to see Nikki and discovers that she has convinced his boss not to fire him. He thanks her, and they then spend the night together. When he returns home, he receives a package containing an eggshell. He becomes furious, and the next morning he goes to his boss's office. Willy informs him that he will work on the case to the end. His employer tells him to resign, because if the case fails, he will undoubtedly lose his position not only in the new law firm, but also in this office. Nevertheless, he is determined to work on the case, because he believes that a person like Ted should be imprisoned. He goes to the police station and blames his friend for not detecting Ted's gun. His friend agrees to search the house one last time. He visits the now depressed lieutenant, because his wife and children have also abandoned him. Later, he goes to the motel where the lovers' meeting had taken place and is told that he will be given the day's CCTV footage. When he returns to the office, he receives a phone call from Ted. The old man continues to mock his efforts. Willy goes to Ted's house and discovers that the cops still haven't found the gun. Willy watches the house without getting sad and goes to the hospital in the hope that Jennifer will wake up. A doctor enters and informs him that it is extremely unlikely to happen. Even if Jennifer regained consciousness, she would not be able to speak, let alone remember who shot her. Later, he is invited to Nikki's family home for a meal. The case is discussed during the meal, and Nikki's brother mocks Willy. But she doesn't know that Willy has resumed work on the case and is infuriated when she learns of it. Nikki argues with Willy for a while, and then leaves. Nikki's father, a judge, encourages Willy to fight for justice. That night, the lieutenant tracks Willy down, and offers to plant false evidence, but he refuses. The next day, he obtains the CCTV footage, but because Ted was wearing a hat, it was not enough to testify in court. Willy and the detective argue, because Willy believes the gun is still in the house, and the police cannot find it. That night, Willy calls the lieutenant to accept the offer to present false evidence in court. So, the next day, he resorts to a ruse. During the trial, he will make a phone call, and instruct his secretary to pretend to come in and whisper in his ear that they have discovered a new piece of evidence. As soon as the trial begins, Ted pushes for an acquittal. It means that the defendant argues that no reasonable jury could find him guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt. A defendant can seek acquittal of all or some of the charges. Since this is entirely legal, the judge asks Willy if he has any evidence to provide. He is about to make the call, but then realizes that Ted is too smart to be fooled by this ruse. As a result, he claims to have no other evidence, and Ted is released. A little later, a gunshot is heard. Willy comes running out and is astonished to find the lieutenant has killed himself on the opposite side of the steps. Ted is given his gun and returns home. Willy stays in the hospital, hoping Jennifer will wake up. The next morning, Ted arrives at the hospital, and Willy is worried that he will kill Jennifer. Willy goes to Nikki and begs her to help him, even though she has nothing to do with it. She argues that he should not be here, and that she cannot help him. He informs her that Ted is going to kill his wife, but she doesn't care. He returns to his boss and learns that Ted has filed a restraining order against him, because he frequently visits Jennifer's hospital. According to his supervisor, Ted is already a free citizen, so Willy should stop. Willy has no choice but to turn to Nikki's father, who signs an injunction, allowing him to go to the hospital to defend Jennifer. But it is too late. By the time he arrives at the hospital, Ted has already killed his wife. The next day, Willy is cleaning the garage, when his supervisor approaches, and asks him to return to work, but he refuses out of shame. He feels guilty about letting a murderer go free, but his employer retorts that it was an attempted murder. This gives him an idea. He resumes reading legal papers and examining the facts. He meets with his detective friend, and when they put the phones next to each other, the detective mistakenly picks up Willy's because the two are identical. Ted's mocking phone call to Willy makes him realize something and show it to the detective. Ted invites him to his home, to give him a gift before he leaves on a trip. Willy enters Ted's house and discovers all his deceptions. Willy found out that he bought a gun just like the lieutenant's, then went to the motel to exchange the two firearms. When the lieutenant discovered Jennifer on the ground, he changed the gun again. He knew that the lieutenant would take his gun to present it in court, so he made the switch again. Ted smiles, confirming that what Willy said was accurate, and criticizing the lieutenant for carrying the weapon they had so desperately sought during the trial. Ted claims that he used only one gunshot, and killed 2 rabbits. He says that even if Willy has the evidence, he could not have prosecuted Ted, because the same person cannot be charged twice for the same crime. Willy, on the other hand, explains that since Ted had let Jennifer die, he could obtain the bullet from her skull, compare it with the one from the lieutenant's gun, and then charge Ted with first-degree murder, a new charge. The police then arrive to arrest Ted. Willy is alone during the new trial about to begin, while Ted is surrounded by a team of highly paid defense lawyers. The movie comes to an end. Please subscribe, like and comment for more of these videos. Have a great day.